I stood in a classroom of students once, and I said, "You are heroes, and you have superpowers." And there was one young man in the very middle of the audience, in the middle of the classroom, and he was so uncomfortable that I explained to him, I said, "Look, a hero is anyone who solves a problem. So whenever you solve a problem, or are working on a problem-solving process, then you are playing the hero." And this time, he laughed. But this was not your ordinary laugh. This laughter had a tone of anger to it. And everyone else laughed at him. I saw him as he slid down in his seat and he bowed his head. And I walked over to him and I said, "What are you thinking?" He mumbled something under his breath so quietly I couldn't hear it. I asked again, "What are you thinking?" He looked up at me and he said, "How can I solve a problem when the problem is me?" And I replied, "You may have the greatest superpowers of them all." This young man's name was Dylan. And for the next several weeks, Dylan and I, we had this thing going, and it went like this. Every time I saw him, I became the starstruck fan of a celebrity. And he treated me like the paparazzi. But I noticed over time that the game began to change. And he would stand a little taller. He would walk a little prouder, as if he was trying to live up to this vision that I had of him. And then one day it happened. He came running up to me and he said, "I did it. I did it. I solved a problem. Somebody tried to fight me and I didn't fight him back." I turned to him and said, "Oh, that's what I call a champion." Thank you. Hero work is very serious business. But when you're working with our youngest heroes in training, it demands a certain level of imagination and play. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you a few techniques using imagination and play that you can use with students, children in your own life, or in your own hero process. The very first step in training young heroes is to claim the role of the hero. Just like an actor claims a role for the stage, or a child plays a role during pretend. Well, no one has to give a child permission for the roles they play. And I promise you, once you claim the role of the hero, the opportunities to be a hero will arise. I had a student who was the smallest little 5-year-old you ever saw. He looked like a big toddler. And because he was so small, everyone teased him. They called him a baby constantly. It happened at home, at school, even on the bus when his big sister was away from adults. They realized she would tease him too. And every time somebody called him a baby, he cried. It just made it worse. So we created this alter identity of being a superhero and gave him permission to take this out in the real world. And one day he was on the playground and this kid came up and said, "You can't play with us, you're just a baby." And he turned to him and said, "I'm not a baby. I am tall Giraffe McGregor." And he turned to walk away, and the teacher overheard him. And she went up and she said, "McGregor, I am so proud of you." And he looked at her and said, "I didn't do that for you." That's what heroes do. You see, when you claim your own identity as a hero, compliments are less important because you don't need someone else to create you. When you shape your own identity as a hero, then bullying, teasing, words of antagonism are less important Because these things don't define you, you have defined yourself. So the first thing you do is claim the role of the hero. The second thing is really understand, what does it mean to you to be a hero? Now, here at the Hero Roundtable, of course, we've seen lots of great examples of heroes that create social change, that are whistleblowers, that solve big problems, that take care of others. But of course, in the world of pretend heroes, kids think of three things. Men and women in tights wearing their briefs on the sunny side, and they battle robots and monsters and intergalactic aliens. But all of these heroes have one thing in common, and that is that they solve problems for themselves and others. So when I'm working with young people, I tell them to focus on the problems that need to be solved. And we reframe those as opportunities to be heroes. Of course, we'd love for all of the problems to be focused on the big social issues of curing world hunger or solving the issues of world peace, but sometimes getting out of bed demands superhuman strength. I know you know what I mean. So when we help children to identify the seemingly simple problems in their lives, they're building capacity. They're building the muscles to solve bigger and bigger and bigger problems. Reframing problems is a tremendous opportunity. I had a student once who said, wait a minute, I always thought that the goal of being happy was to not have any problems at all. Like you're financially independent and you're a YouTube star, as if they don't have any problems at all. But of course, problems are opportunities, and how we respond to problems over time becomes who we are. The next step in using your imagination and play is to identify your superpowers. Now, we could spend all day talking about what those look like, but there's one I'd like to talk about today that doesn't get very much attention. And that is the power of our emotions. Emotions are a force of energy. Emotions are energy in motion. They can push us forward, they can lift us up, and they can take us where we want to go. I promise every goal you have ever achieved has had the force of emotion behind it, because determination helps us determine who we are. But when we're doing hero work, it's important to help children recognize their emotions, recognize and identify those daily emotions, because it's a superpower. I had a student named Eric, and he was incredibly powerful. He had this intensity that you could feel from miles away. And it showed up in a very particular way that I told him was a superpower, though he didn't think it was a superpower at all. He thought it was a big problem because it had created a lot of problems for him, and that was his anger. And one day, he blew up and he walked right out the door. And I went after him and I went, wow, that was incredible. Did you feel that intensity? And I could just see his face was red. He was sweating. And I said, have you ever seen a superhero movie? Now, that's one of the techniques that I like to use with young children when they're caught in an intense feeling, is to ask them something completely unrelated. Have you ever seen a superhero movie where a superhero gets caught in a trap? Trapped behind jaws of steel. And they can't save the world. They can't fight the villain. They have to break free from that trap before they can solve any problems. Have you ever seen that? And he said, yeah. I want you to think of your anger as being a superhero trap. Now describe, in terms of a superhero movie, what that trap would look like if you were a superhero caught in a trap of anger. And he said, I am hot lava in the bottom of a volcano, and I'm going to explode and somebody's going to get hurt. And I went, yeah, that's what it looks like. I don't want that person to get hurt, to be me, any of your peers, but most of all you. So what kind of escape plan can we come up with to help you escape from this trap of anger? And what he came up with was a bottle of water with him at his desk, because what puts out fire? Water. So the plan was, whenever he felt his temperature start to rise, his heart beating, he would drink an entire bottle of water. And what happens when you're drinking water? Your blood pressure is regulated, your heart slows down, your breathing slows down, and the assignment was he couldn't respond until he had finished that bottle of water, because it would get his thinking activated again. Because feelings are just clues that there is a problem to solve, and then they can give us the energy that we need to solve those problems. Instead of looking at emotions as the enemy, they're the tool that we need to help us along. The other job that he had was to take all of that energy about everything that made him angry and to apply it to the soccer ball on the field. And he became a very aggressive player. The power of imagination and play and pretend is a very important part of becoming a hero. And that can be true for children and for adults, because it's our imagination that helps us find possibilities in the world for solutions. When I was a child, I escaped into the world of imagination to avoid the problems, because that felt like a safe space. But as an adult, I know that the world of pretend and imagination is essential if we're going to solve the problems that we face today. Thank you.
The Hero Roundtables are the global events that ask the question, what is a hero? You've just seen one hero talk. To find more and join the conversation, visit our website or social media.